Welcome to episode zero point 0.1 of the Frank and Steve podcast, where my good friend Frank and I talk about football, and more football. We will discuss some of the biggest games happening during the week in Europe, so be sure to subscribe for more episodes. I think it's about time we got to share our unique perspective as diehard football fans, and what better way to kick off things than to discuss Tuesday's Champions League game between Chelsea and Lille, with Chelsea coming on top 2-0. Kai Havertz and Christian Pulisic scoring the goals for the Blues. First of all, Frank, Niaje, it's a cold evening here in Hackettstown, New Jersey. I hope you are well, and thank you for joining me as we take the first few steps into the unknown world of podcasting. We should have done this sooner, but I think everything happens at the right time, my friend. So anyway, first midweek game, Chelsea versus Lille, Stamford Bridge in London. Even though Chelsea finished second in the group stage, there was definitely a sense of relief among most Chelsea fans at least, when they drew French side Lille for the first knockout round. In the first half, the game from a Chelsea perspective basically just went according to plan. Chelsea's pressure in the early parts of the first half paid off when Kai Havertz headed from Ziyech's corner. Havertz had two good opportunities to score earlier, but he squandered the first chance from a cross and forced a good save from the keeper. And the resulting corner led to the first goal in the 7th minute. Chelsea were definitely the better side in the first half. Alonso tested the keeper with a side foot volley. I think that was easily saved. Lille, on the other hand, tried their best but just lacked the quality to hurt Chelsea. Renato Sanchez and Bamba were the standout players for Lille. And Sanchez, must say, very good player. Bayern bought him for quite a bit of money as a teenager. Didn't really work out. Went to Swansea on loan. Didn't really work out. I remember a particular game against Chelsea too. He just kicked the ball into the advertising board. So, things never really worked out for Sanchez, but I'm happy for him. He seems to have found a home in Lille, and big clubs are, knocking on the door. Anyway, Chelsea's second goal came in the 62nd minute. N'Golo Kante ran through the middle after Lille gave the ball away cheaply. He laid it off to Pulisic, who took a few touches and scored. There's some who say that Pulisic is the best American soccer player ever, but we'll have that discussion another day. After that, Chelsea seemed to be in cruise control. Ruben Loftus-Cheek on for Kovacic and Saul on for Ziyech, due because of what looked like injuries to Ziyech and Kovacic. From a Chelsea point of view, hopefully it's not serious. The substitutes didn't have much of an impact, and Ruben Loftus-Cheek was probably the standout performer out of all of them. Hatem Ben Arfa came on for Renato Sanchez. I genuinely thought Ben Arfa retired, but he showed good glimpses of how technically gifted he is. Other than that, fairly comfortable win for Chelsea, especially from a defensive point of view. Lille were more likely to score from a Chelsea mistake, and Mendy almost made a mistake. He slipped and made a really poor clearance, but the defense cleared. What else? Such was Thiago Silva's class that the commentator said. I think his quote was, "The man who may have written the encyclopedia on defending clears again." There have been a lot of good defenders for Chelsea over the years, but the question is Thiago Silva one of the greatest? I'd really like to know your opinion. Okay, I think that's it. Easy to win for Chelsea. Well, not easy, but fairly comfortable win for Chelsea. Let me go and watch the highlights of the Villarreal Juventus game. I think when I last checked, it was 1-1. I think Vlahovic scored an early goal. He seems to be settling in well at Juventus so far. I'm surprised he actually moved to Juventus, but so far so good for him. A lot of clubs really wanted him. Believe Chelsea may have been one of them. No, probably not. But he decided to join Juventus, so I'm happy for him. Yeah, Chelsea 2, Lille 0.
Yeah, episode 0.1, you say? Okay, I'm glad that we're doing this, by the way, Steve. This is going to be interesting. It's going to be an interesting journey for me. I don't know where it's going to take us, but here we are. Anyway, niko poa sana huku Nairobi. It's Wednesday morning, the night after the game. A bit chilly, not as cold as where you are in the US. But I think we'll make it count. We'll find a way of making it work about the time difference. But what better way to know the difficulties of the podcast world apart from just taking the jump or taking the plunge? So here we go. I watched the Chelsea game last night. I didn't have a chance to watch the Juve Villarreal game, and it's also a good thing because two very defensive teams, especially on European nights. No one wants to watch that. But usually the games that I miss or ignore are usually entertaining. I know the results. It was 1-1 as you say, but I haven't had a chance to watch the highlights. So to bring up the validity of my boring point. Anyway, back to the Chelsea game. It's a classic European performance. It was comfortable, as you say, but it wasn't really that comfortable if you put the whole game into context, given how well Lille actually played. The result doesn't say everything. I was really impressed by Bamba too, but mostly by Renato Sanchez. To me, I usually watch Renato whenever he's playing a big game for Portugal or his club. Those are the only few times, and each and every time I've watched him, he's impressed. He's been really impressive. Whenever I watch opposition players or opposition teams play, I really think about how they would fit in a Chelsea side. And looking at Renato and watching him play against go toe-to-toe with N'Golo Kante, the greatest, I just feel like he's the perfect replacement for N'Golo Kante, because you wouldn't believe this, but he's still actually 24 years of age. He's so composed on the ball. He's very creative. He's very quick. He's rapid. He's very strong, very difficult to knock off the ball, and that's a type of player that I would love to have in my team. Anyway, his performance, again, last night, I think he was the best player on the pitch for me. And I think N'Golo Kante only came into the fore after he got grips with him, with Renato in the second half. I think Renato ran out of steam and N'Golo came into his own. It was actually weird that people are counting Chelsea touches, because especially after that dreadful game Lukaku had the weekend against Palace. So it was, I think Havertz got something like 16, or I think more than 16 touches in the first half, and he needed way less than that to score. In the overall scheme of things, looking at the game, I don't think it was very impressive. I was really impressed by Lille's press. Every time they made it very difficult for Chelsea to play out from the back, especially in the first half, because they pressed as a team. One of the best presses I've seen, because It's triggered by Jonathan David at the front, and everyone followed. They followed the space. They don't follow. It's not a thing where everyone just presses on his own, like Manchester United are trying to do with Ralph Rangnick. Where that's why it's not working, because they don't press as a team. While Lille really played well and they handled the ball really well. The only bad thing about them is that they were profligate up front. They couldn't finish. They just couldn't finish. They couldn't create enough chances because I know they have one of the best finishers in Europe in Jonathan David up front. So they couldn't create enough for him. Although Bamba really tried and Renato really tried, but Chelsea's defense stood firm. They were very solid, especially Thiago Silva, the guy you mentioned, and Rudiger too. Rudiger was also impressive, although we had a few hairy moments from him when he sliced the ball and almost got to scored a very comical own goal against his own team. A few questions you've asked: is Pulisic the greatest ever? The greatest American player ever? I'd say not even close in my book. It will be a hard debate, but I think just rocking to my brain and thinking about the American players that I've watched play, there's so many who are better than Pulisic. I'm still not convinced on Pulisic because he has the talent. I think if you'd say he's the most talented American player ever, then I'd say yes. But the greatest ever, big no for me. I think London Donovan and Dempsey. It's between those two because of the things they achieved and how they played. I think they scored a lot more goals than you could look this up, but I'm positive they scored a lot more goals for their clubs. Especially, it's easy to compare them since they all three played in England. I'm not sure you could bring anybody else into the debate, but the US has been blessed with a lot of keepers who played in the EPL, in the English Premier League or in Europe. And I think some of them would want a word with Christian on that. They already have a couple playing right now in England. I think with Stephen and Manchester City, and I'm not sure about the second keeper's name. Arsenal was trying to get him. Did they get him? I'm not sure. We can check that and confirm. But the US has had Brad Friedel. They've had Casey Keller, and I think Hanneman, who played for Wolves. I'm not really sure about that. And Tim Howard. I think Tim Howard would like a word, especially after the heroics he had at the 2014 World Cup. Either 2014 World Cup or 2010. I'm not really sure about that. There's a lot of things we need to check. Yeah. But for me, Pulisic is nowhere near the greatest. He's still very young. He's still about 22, I think. He still has time. He will be the greatest by the time his career is done. But at the moment, no. One of the things I see as a deficiency in Pulisic's game is he doesn't look up. The best players know what's around them. Pulisic only wants to get his head down and dribble past players. Who's got good dribbling skills, but he's got a good touch, great touch. But he doesn't look around him. His awareness is not top class. If he would know what's around him whenever he gets the ball, he would have much more success, and he would be much more calm in front of goal, and he would, as a consequence, score much more than he's getting at the moment. I know he's not had the rest of times at Chelsea because he's not being played at in his best position. But coming to a big club like Chelsea, that was to be expected. He wasn't just going to walk in, regardless of what his price tag was. He wasn't just going to walk in and be the main man. He has to prove that he's the main man, and he's yet to do that. So I think the jury is still out on Christian Pulisic. Greatest American player ever? No. There's some people you say need to really do a bit of research. I think Chelsea need to be worried going into the League Cup final on Sunday against Liverpool, because Liverpool have most of their players fit, and Chelsea's most informed player, Hakim Ziyech, got injured last in the middle of the game, and it wasn't a good game. It was a good thing to see. The way Ziyech walked out of the field, in similar fashion to Kovacic, I don't think there was a touch on them in terms of somebody fouling them or actually injuring them, which is usually worse. It's usually a bad sign. So I'd be surprised to see either of them make it to the game. I think maybe Kovacic might recover in time to be on the bench. I'm not really sure. I'm not a doctor. But if Chelsea lose those two, that's bad luck. It's going to be really even harder for them to beat Liverpool on Sunday, because Liverpool are on form. Chelsea are also on form. I had the commentator mention that Chelsea has only lost one game in the last 18. Looking at the way Chelsea fans are talking about the team, I don't think you'd get that impression. I think the only loss was to Manchester City at the Etihad, which is a terrible showing from Chelsea. But the one thing Chelsea knows how to do is to win trophies. Ever since Roman Abramovich stepped onto the scene, Chelsea have been crushing it more than any other English team. So I think the odds for Chelsea to win, I think Liverpool will go into the game as slight favourites over Chelsea, just going by form and considering how Chelsea's attackers have not been good. It was a good thing yesterday for Chelsea that two attackers scored in Kai and Christian, but it's going to be really difficult, and it's going to be an interesting game on that one. I think we'll do a preview of the final later on and talk about the details in the game. I think you should talk about how Chelsea are going to win, and I think I'll talk about how Liverpool would win. Another question you asked is about Thiago Silva, if he's one of the greatest, if he's one of the best. I think yes. You could bring a few people into the debate, but Thiago Silva has been at Chelsea for a very short time, but we've seen him play for AC Milan. I think he played at Porto too, but that was for a brief period. But at PSG, we've seen him, and we've also watched him play for Brazil. He's immaculate. He reads the game better than anyone I've ever seen. And I've watched a lot of centre-backs. I think he's the best defender in the world right now. I know many people say Van Dijk, but Van Dijk is much younger than him and still has time. He's the best. He still has those physical attributes. He's quick, very quick. He's strong because he's like a man mountain at the end, at the back. But then when you look at Thiago Silva, he plays in a similar way to Van Dijk, but we have to remember he's 37 years old. and he's playing in the EPL, which is a very difficult league to play in. He didn't start really well at Chelsea, considering West Brom, the West Brom games, they really toasted him. He didn't have a good time against West Brom, but just looking at the way he plays, especially in the big games. What about Thiago's game? There is no deficiency in Silva's game. None whatsoever. Even despite the fact that he lacks a bit of pace, he's played against the quickest wingers, the quickest forwards. Still gets out. He still manages to come up on top. What attributes do you look at when you think about the best defenders? Tackling, he's great at it. Heading, very great. Passing, reading the game, and commanding the centre backs. He knows the game more than, like, at Chelsea we have been blessed to have very good defenders, but apart from JT, I don't think there's been anyone better than, I think he's the second best defender we've had. And that's high praise because we've had Gary Cahill, we've had William Gallas, we've had Marcel Desailly, we've had Frank Leboeuf. Lots and lots and lots of centre backs, very good ones. That's a place where Chelsea never lacks. We get the best strikers in, but we never lack on centre backs. And I would put him right next to John Terry as the second best centre back to ever play for Chelsea. In terms of the world, I think he's one of the best. He really is. I don't know for how long we can still have him, but Chelsea are blessed to have him. Finally, on Vlahovic, I don't think Chelsea were interested, especially because Chelsea have one Romelu Lukaku up top, so those two would not be able to play together. It's sad that Chelsea doesn't have enough. Chelsea can't seem to get the best out of its strikers. I think the only three strikers who have really succeeded at Chelsea are Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank, King Didier Drogba, and Demba Ba. Not Demba Ba, I'm sorry. Demba Ba was okay, but no, Diego Costa, those three. The others have been bad, to say the least. Some have been atrocious. And the expensive ones tend to be on the atrocious scale of things. Morata, Shevchenko, Torres. Torres wasn't that bad in there, and I think it's just the expectations. But a big failure considering it was a British record, £50 million at that time. Shevchenko was also a British record, I think, £30 million at that time, I think in 2006 or 2007. Lukaku is outdoing all of them. He's worse than all of them. It's unimaginable, but it's happening. I think we should discuss Lukaku on one of the next few episodes because it's a hot topic right now, and we should see why is Lukaku's failing so badly. I had high hopes for Lukaku after watching him play for Inter, but things are not working out. So, episode 0.1. Let's see how this goes. Goodbye.